Hello YouTube family, hope you guys are having a great day. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive look into Adobe Illustrator on the iPad. So let's get started. So as a lot of you might have seen at Adobe Max this year during their free live stream event, they announced that Adobe Illustrator for the iPad was now available to everybody who had an iPad. And so I thought it would be fun to go through and do a deep dive look to see, what kind of features it has, how does it compare and contrast to other apps like Adobe Fresco, Adobe Illustrator Draw, etc. And so that's what we're going to be talking about in this video. Now, I actually was invited to the alpha version of Adobe Illustrator on the iPad, and I'll be honest, where it was when I first saw it and where you guys might have seen it at the Adobe Max in 2019, leaps and bounds ahead. It is so amazing. What they did to this app in the course of the last year is spectacular. And I can tell you this right now, I imagine that there's going to be a lot of amazing updates between now and next year's Adobe Max for Adobe Illustrator on the iPad. That is such a long title to say, so I do apologize if you guys get bored of hearing that, but that's what we're going to be talking about today. So a few months back, before Adobe Max even announced that Adobe Illustrator for the iPad was coming out this year, that it was going to be available as of the moment that they talked about, I was actually part of an Adobe event called Make It on Adobe Illustrator for the iPad. Catchy title, right? It was actually a lot of fun because I was able to work with a lot of other illustrators, make some new friends, actually meet some people that I've followed for a long time, and we actually created some fun, interesting creations. And so this was actually the first time I'd actually taken a look at Adobe Illustrator for the iPad in a very long time. In fact, it was probably close to a year from when I last looked at it. And just seeing like what you could do in it got me really excited, but I didn't take as much of a deep dive look until just a couple of weeks ago. And I'm actually pleasantly surprised with it. I think that it has a lot of potential, and I think it might even allow me to leave my MacBook Pro in my book bag whenever I'm traveling, or even just leave it here in the studio when I go out, to create some fun stuff for myself. It has a lot of power and a lot of potential built in to a single app, and I'm really excited about that. And I think you guys are going to possibly see what I'm talking about throughout this walkthrough. So by all means, if you guys have any questions about anything, please feel free to ask away. I'm going to try in the description to have an actual catalog of all the different features and tools that we talk about. So if you need to go back and figure out certain things, you can go and jump between those. But if you guys are not subscribed yet to my YouTube channel, please hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and also if you like this video, hit the like button. And once again, I know I just probably said this a minute ago, but if you have any questions about anything involving what we talk about in this video or about Adobe Illustrator for the iPad, please leave them down below and I will try to answer them as quickly as possible. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually open up Adobe Illustrator on the iPad. And what we're welcome with is a familiar welcome screen. So if you have ever used Adobe Fresco, and I believe Adobe Photoshop on the iPad, you will have seen this exact view. In fact, let's quick jump over to Adobe Fresco, and you can see pretty much the exact same view. The only difference is the different files. Now, I'm not going to go into the welcome screen here because I did that in my Adobe Fresco video. If you'd like to check that out, you can check it out down below in the show notes, or there should be something that pops up in the corner, I think, that will link directly to that video. The only thing I will touch on real quick, and this is something you can do, I believe, throughout the app. You don't just have to do it here on the welcome screen. But if you click on your avatar in the top right-hand corner, you will see your app settings. Now, if you'll notice in your color theme, I have it set to dark. You can set it to light or lightest. A lot of the videos that you see out here with Adobe Illustrator on the iPad, everybody is using either the light or lightest setting. I don't like that. I don't like using the light settings. I prefer the dark setting, and the number one reason for that is because of the fact that I can save my battery life. When you use the dark modes on your MacBook or on your iPad, you will actually save a lot of battery life because you don't have as many LEDs or whatever you want to call them projecting white, and so it saves a lot of your battery life. So just wanted to quick mention that. So we're going to get started. We're going to jump into this landscape scene 1 here on the far left. And this is a file I prepped specifically for this video. This is an illustration I created on the desktop, but I felt like it was the perfect example for us to go through in this walkthrough. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to just do a brief overview of what you're seeing here in the app. So into center, we have our artboard. This is actually different than previous apps or Adobe Fresco, for instance, where if we click on the title in the top left corner, we actually have the artboard selected. And we can even go in and change the artboard name itself. But if you'll notice down here, and this is something that I'm touching on real quick because we're going to see this throughout everything in the app, you'll see this action bar down below. And this will give you an idea of what you can do with your current selection, whether it's an artboard or a path or a shape, you'll be able to see what you can do with those elements. So here we have 3 options. We can actually click and move the artboard itself. We can transform the bounding boxes here, or we can duplicate the actual artboard, which creates a copy right here. And then the last one is delete through right here. But I'm going to undo that so we can get rid of the artwork there. When you do delete your artboard here in Adobe Illustrator on the iPad, just like in Adobe Illustrator on the desktop, it will leave your artwork on the canvas itself. Okay, so that's your artboard. On the left-hand side, we have our toolbar, which extends from the top all the way to the bottom area down here. And then we have our color. So unlike Adobe Fresco, we actually have 2 color selections. We have the fill on the top and we have the stroke on the bottom. And then we even have these arrows right here, which actually switches between the 2. On the right side, we have a lot of our layer options, our property options, and then we have a few other things like Pathfinder, the text tool, and some new fun features that I'll share with you in a little bit. And finally, at the top of the screen, we have our area where we can actually have the name of our document. We have the zoom percentage, and on the right side, we have the undo and we have the redo applications. We have the ability to export, we have help, we have settings, and then we have a few other things like our preview mode, so previewing it from preview or outlines. I actually never use outlines. I see a lot of other illustrators and designers use outlines all the time. I don't really use that. I usually use preview, but that just wanted to quick go over that with you. So we're going to start this this deep dive here on the left side with the tools. So again, if you guys have seen my walkthrough with Adobe Fresco, you'll notice that there's actually quite a bit of similarities, but also huge differences in this tool panel. So at the top of the screen, we have our selection tool. That's where we can actually go. We can select our actual artboard, or we can select actual elements in our illustration. So if you notice, when I select, just like I said before, we have these action bars down below. And to go over this real quick, let's actually zoom in here so you guys can see it a little bit better. We have a few different options with our selections. So in this instance, we have a few different ones. We have our opacity. So we can actually click and drag the opacity for the illustration. Now, one thing you'll notice is that unlike other sliders, if you go all the way to the left, it doesn't take you all the way to 0. And if you take it all the way to the right, it doesn't take you all the way to 100%. So it's something where you have to keep moving over until you get to where you want it to be. So let's get it back up to 100%. And then we have here, if you have any strokes. So right here, we don't have any strokes on this example, but actually let's select something that does have a stroke. And so if we click this here, we can actually change the thickness of our strokes. And then let's select the cloud again. Then we have our position where this is. So if we drag this over here, we'll notice that it is behind the car. So let's actually zoom out a little bit. You'll notice that the cloud is behind the car. So if we click this here, this actually changes the order of the stack. That's what they call it here in Adobe Illustrator. This would be the similar effect of sending behind or sending to the front. So if we click on this and we click on the order of the stack order, if we move this all the way to the right, it should, as we're moving, we'll move this down some so you can see it properly. as we move this over, because remember it's having to bring this up from so many different elements within this illustration. There we go. Now we have it in the front of the illustration. Now, if we don't want it to be in front of the car, we can go back in here and we can press it back and it'll do that. So that is the send to back or the stack option. I don't quite know exactly what they call it. In here, I believe they do drag stacking order is what they call it here. Then, of course, just like with the artboard, we have the transform. This works great with smaller elements. So for instance, if I go and try and move this bird here, notice how it messes up. But if I go and press and hold on this nudge feature, we can actually move it a lot easier. Then we have the lock. So this actually locks the object so that if we click and drag, we're not actually selecting it. It will show it up that it is there, that it is locked. But if we move the background, notice how it does not move that object. And to simply unlock it, we can just click on the actual lock itself. Then we have the group or ungroup feature. So now I had ungrouped these, so now I can move each element on its own. Let's undo that because we want to keep those grouped. And then we have the duplicate, just like what we saw on the artboard. So if we move this over, we now have a copy of it. And then, of course, the trash can to delete it. Now, the next tool that we have here is the direct selection tool. This is something that we have missed out on a lot of the other Adobe apps. I'm not quite sure if it is in Adobe Photoshop on the iPad. Now, I know this hasn't been in Adobe Illustrator Draw or Adobe Photoshop Sketch or Adobe Fresco, but it is here in Adobe Illustrator. So if we take the direct selection tool, and actually let's zoom in on this tree here, and we take this direct selection tool and we select the line here in the tree, we can actually see that it selected one anchor point. It hasn't selected the whole thing. And now we have actually some other options. So we can go through, we can add handles to this. So if we want to go and curve that, we can do that. We can actually go and delete the anchor point, I believe. Let's see, I believe that's delete. Yep, that's delete the anchor point, which we don't want to do that. And we also have the trash can too. That will delete the entire thing. You have other options down here. I'm not going to go into complete detail in that. That will be in another video. But this allows you to get a lot more control. So for instance, if we actually add the handles, you'll notice that this one right here pops up and this removes the handles like so. And you can get a lot more control with a lot of your little elements. So if you want to just select one of the cloud shapes up here, you can then get this. And then if you actually click the selection tool, it will keep that single element selected. So you can go through and you can resize it however you want. Now, one quick thing when it comes to resizing elements, if you click the touch tool right down here, and you click the corner and pull down, it will actually constrain it and keep its overall portions correct. So that, you know, if we go through and do that again without holding that, you can kind of see like how everything is just going everywhere. It's just chaos and everything. So we don't want that when it comes to resizing our elements. So if you press and hold this, you can resize it however you want. Okay, so that is the selection tools. Now, the next tool that we have here is the pen tool. So we actually go into the pen tool here. We have a stroke set to black and a fill set to clear. Now, this is something that I don't know if a lot of you use Adobe Illustrator on the desktop or if you've used Adobe Fresco, but this is something I've been looking for a while now. So you can see here, we are setting our anchor points and we have a lot of control as to what we are doing. So I'm just going in here and now you can see I've kind of created a rough shape for one of these land masses here. But first, before I do that, if we go and create a second one, we actually have the handles as well. So if we go, we can see that we have a lot more control. Now, the one thing that I will say here that does drive me a little bit crazy, and it might drive some of you crazy as well with the pen tool is if we go in here and we click a new shape, and then if we go and click on the second anchor over here on the left, you'll notice that instead of being able to control the bottom line, we're now controlling the top line, which is not something that normally you would do in Adobe Illustrator on the desktop. In fact, it would have it to where you're controlling the bottom line down here versus the top line itself. Weird little thing. I don't know what the differences are there, but that's just something to think about. Now, if we go in here and we actually select the anchor point up top with the direct selection tool, you'll notice that we can actually go in and change the corner radius, just like so. So you can see here we can have a lot of potential with the pen tool, as well as using the direct selection tool, corner radiuses, and everything like that. The one thing is, I will say this, there is a learning curve. Like, you are going to have a learning curve when it comes to going through and doing these tools or creating an illustration in here. This is something I'm actually really excited for. In fact, one of the future videos is going to be me creating an illustration like the one you see here, completely on the iPad. So stay tuned for that. So we're going to go ahead and delete this right here. Now, below that, we have another powerful tool. This is a tool that I actually don't really use in the desktop app, but because of the fact that we have a stylus with the iPad, we can actually use this quite well, and that is the pencil tool. So you can see here, I'm going to create just like a rough eye illustration, and it's just really cool. I really like how well the pen tool, or excuse me, the pencil tool works here. You have a lot of control, and if you look here at the bottom below the color panels, you can actually see that there is some smoothing. So you can change the smoothing of this. So if you want it to be a little bit more smooth, which is something I usually do. I usually prefer high levels of smoothing, as you'll see in my Adobe Fresco video if you check that out. But it can also mess you up as well, because if you notice, if I try and do that same type of shape there, it looks a little wonky. So it works on certain things, but doesn't work on everything. On here, I'll probably actually keep it closer to where it should be, and there we go. That looks a bit better. The other option though here, if you press and hold on the pencil tool, you actually have the blob brush tool. Now, again, if you have followed me for a while, you've seen my blob brush tutorial here on Adobe Illustrator for the desktop. And what this does is this allows you to go in and actually fill with not strokes, but with actual vector paths, similar to what you would see in Adobe Fresco. So if we go in here and let's change the color, let's change it to red. And whoops, we did that to the stroke there. Let's actually deselect that. Let's change this to a red color. And we can actually see not only do we have the smoothness here, but we also have brush settings. So if we wanted to, we can make sure that the pressure dynamics play a part in it. We'll change that to 80%. We'll keep the roundness where it is, and let's see what happens. So here I'm barely putting any pen pressure on here, and then here I'm putting a lot more pen pressure. So now this actually feels a lot like using Adobe Fresco. It's not 100%, but you know what? This will get the job done. And if we go and select these, you'll notice that actually combine those, so that's a solid shape. And we go into the stack here, we can send that back and send it behind the actual strokes itself. So that's a fun little tool that I think is going to be very useful for especially people who like to do drawn elements. One thing that I wish that they would include here would be a width tool, which we don't really have yet. I don't know if it's something that they're going to be coming out with in the future, but that would be good, especially with applying to these pencil drawings. So we're going to go ahead and delete that there. Let's zoom back out. And then the next part we have here is the eraser. Actually, let's go through and undo that. And let's keep that there just for this example. And we use the eraser tool. And as you can imagine, it will erase both the strokes and the fill. So let's actually select these so you guys can see this a bit better. And we'll use the direct selection so you can see all of the anchor points. And when we go and run the eraser across, you can even see with here that it actually cuts these strokes off. So it's a lot more control, a lot more stuff that you can do here. So it's a lot of fun. All right, so let's go ahead and delete this now. Now, below the eraser tool, we actually have the shape tools. Now, this is very different from Adobe Fresco because unlike Adobe Fresco, here we have a lot more control. So first we have the square tool, which again, you can create in any way that you would like. And you even have a rounded corner automatically in the corner here. Now you can do this where you can round all the corners all at once, or if you take the direct selection, you'll notice that all corners are showing and you can select one single corner and round it like that. You'll also notice that we have some new elements that popped up here like the scissors, which actually will cut the path. And so now we have a cut path here. So if we move it, we can move it away and it is separate from the rest. So we're going to delete that, and we're going to go back to shapes, and we're going to take a look at some of the others. Now, the ellipses works about the same as the square, but the triangle is something that I would like to show here. You can go and change it in any width, height, whatever you're looking for. But here's the fun part. This is not just a triangle tool, it's also a polygon. So if you'll notice on the right side here, you have these two arrows. You can actually drag them up, and they increase the number of size of the polygon from a triangle of 3 all the way up to 10. It will only go up to 10, unfortunately. It won't go any beyond that. Hopefully in a future version of the app, they will increase it, because I do know some people who like to use a lot more shapes or sides to their shapes than what we have here. So we're going to go ahead and delete that as well. And so that is basically it. You also have a star. And again, with the star, the only thing here is that you don't have the ability. That's also something that I wish they did here, like in the polygon, where we had something on the right side to increase the number of points. Right now, it is just a 5-point star. And I don't believe that you can go through and change any types of data with this, or any types of elements with this. Below that, we also have the text tool. So this is something that was also added to Adobe Fresco. And as you can see here, as I pulled that out, the properties panel on the right side popped out with all the information. So you can go in, and as you see, you can change the text by clicking the keyboard icon in the action panel. And you can go and say, we'll just go Rocky Rourke, just for this example. Once you're done using the keyboard, then you can go in and you can change to a different font. These are all basically your Adobe fonts, and I believe Apple fonts as well. So you can play around with it and you can have a lot of fun with it. I would definitely suggest that anybody who is going to be using this feature, get familiar with the typefaces that they have here. I don't know, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe you can possibly add more fonts. You can actually, you can add more fonts probably from your libraries, and you can also find more fonts directly in the Adobe Fonts section, which is what you see here. So you can click in and you can see all the different categories of fonts that they include. So definitely something to keep in mind with that. So again, we're going to go and delete that. Now, just like we showed earlier in the video, let's undo that because I kind of moved that around. Did not mean to do that. We have here the artboard tool. So this allows you to actually go in and create different artboards. Now this created a brand new artboard over here, but then you can also go and click and drag and create an artboard as well. So that's also something in case you are wanting to create additional illustrations within a single document, you can do that. One thing to keep in mind though is that with these files here, especially something like this that is very complex, these illustrations can be very beefy, and they can also slow down your machine, as you might see a little bit later in this tutorial when we get over to the right side panel where we're going to be selecting big objects like this car here. Below the artboards, we actually have the images where you can pull images from your camera, from your photos, your files, cloud documents, and your libraries. Let's actually jump into the libraries here, and let's look at Bird Rock Brewing Company, which was a fun side project I did. And you can place the actual photos in here. Remember to press the touch button in the bottom right here to resize it however you want without losing that shape, because you don't want to go through here and resize it and it's all weird and wonky and squish. You don't want that. All right, now we get to my favorite part. This is actually my favorite part. It was my favorite in Adobe Fresco, and it's my favorite here, and that is the color panel. So first off, you have your fill color and your stroke. There's one major difference between the two when it comes to their panel, and that is the fill color, which is the top, has not only the solid color, sorry about that, not only does it have the solid color, but it also has the gradient as well. So I don't use a lot of gradients, so I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about this, but you will see that it includes the radial gradient in the middle and the live gradient on the right. Below that, let's go back over to solid color. You see here that there we have our color wheel. We also have default colors. We have white in the top left corner, black in the bottom left corner. We have the transparent or no color selection in the bottom right. And then we have the eyedropper, which we can go and move around our screen and pick individual colors. Now, one reason that this is actually a good idea to use this is you can go in, you can find specific colors that you need. And then if you go down to where it says swatches and you see the plus, you can hit that plus and it automatically will create that swatch for you. So it is saved right there. Now, a huge difference between Adobe Fresco and Adobe Illustrator on the iPad is the hex code. Now, this is something that we haven't really seen in Adobe Fresco or any of the previous Adobe apps. I think Adobe Photoshop might have it, but I'm not sure if I don't think the others do. So you can actually go in here and let's say you have a hex value saved to your desktop, but it's not saved to your library. You can go in, you can put that in there. Or if a client says, hey, can you change this hex value of this color to this? You can go through and do it there. Below that, we have a few other things. We have color books. So these are any types of color books, including Pantone colors, in case you are doing any type of illustrations or projects for printing. You can pull those exact color books there. But I actually use the library, so I can actually go in here and select my primary library, and you can see I have all of my swatches here. Again, one thing I wish that they would do a little bit differently is I wish that when you slid this up, instead of it just being the small little window, I wish the swatches up the top also moved. That way you could see a lot more colors. Right now, the max you can really see is 4 color themes. Unless you go and do it halfway, then you can technically see 5. But that's one thing I wish that you could do there. So that's like a brief overview of this. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the stroke color because it's about the same. The only thing I will show you is just like when we change the stroke here, and if we press these arrows, you can see that it switches the colors. Okay, so now we've gone through all the tools on the left side. I know there's a lot of information there. And remember, if you have to, you can go back down into the show notes and you can go through to different areas. I've tried to earmark as much information as possible for you guys in case you guys have any questions. All right, so on the right side, now we get into the interesting part. So first thing we have here is the layers. So one thing to note here, every single illustration I generally create, especially illustrations like this one here, they are all on one layer. That's why you only see layer 1, and then you see all these groups and paths that are showing up down below here. Now, if you have multiple layers, they're all going to show up here. Now, you can still select individual things through this actual layer, through the actual groups here, in case that's what you would like to do, in case you're looking for specific objects, or you're trying to see where they show up on your actual stack. Below the layers, we have the properties. So let's actually select this sun here. And you can see here we have the actual width of it. I believe that is in pixels. Yes, we have the width, we have the height, we have the X and Y values, which is where it is located on the actual artboard. We also have rotation. So if we wanted to, let's actually grab one of these clouds so we can kind of see, we can rotate the clouds by just clicking and dragging with our Apple Pencil on there. Let's undo that so it can fix it. And here's a better example if you see this with the car, rotating the car. And notice how it looks kind of choppy. That's because it is a bit more of a meaty group layer, and so it's going to be a little bit slower just in your overall view. That's because I'm using a first generation iPad Pro. I'm sure that if you're using a more up-to-date version, it might be a little bit more fluid. So if we go back and click on the sun there, you can see we have the appearance, which has the fill. If it has a stroke, it'll show the stroke right there. Let's actually go ahead and add a stroke to it just for this example. All right, so when we go back over here, let's click on that again. So we see a fill, we see a stroke. We also have the blending mode. So if you wanted to change it for some reason to multiply or something like that, you can do that. Let's change it back. You can change the opacity of the object that you have selected. And then you can go in here and change the stroke. So if I wanted to increase the stroke, I could do that. If I wanted the stroke to just be dashes, I could do that as well. And I can also change how it is interpreted on the blue line itself, its guideline. So if we go back up here and we select this, you'll notice that there's this very thin blue line that goes around the circle. That is, I believe, I don't know the exact term of it, but I call it a guideline. So if we go here and we see in the bottom area where it says stroke, number one, we can see that we can control the size of the dash itself, and we can control the size of the gap itself there. But we can also change things like having it centered on the line like it is now. We can have it inside of the line, or we can have it on the outside of the line, which actually for this instance looks pretty good, because actually what it does is it makes it look like it is sun rays. So if we increase the stroke, isn't that cool? It actually looks pretty good. We can also go in here and round the edges if it was a square, or we could chisel the edges if we would like it to look like that. We'll just put it back to normal, and you can see it here. Now that's actually pretty cool. I actually think that's a pretty nifty way of going about doing this, but for my case, I actually just want it to be a simple sun, so we're going to go ahead and remove that stroke there. Now that's the properties panel. So then you have the precision panel. Now, this is something that I generally probably will not be using for my illustrations, but for some of you out there who are very analytical about how you use certain elements, you may end up using that here. So for instance, we have the snapping, which allows you to snap things specifically to guides. We have the grid, which this is actually pretty cool. I don't use the grid, but you can definitely use it. You can set the color of the grid. So if you wanted to have a lime green grid for some reason, or if you wanted to have a light gray grid, you could do that. You can change from your regular grid to a dotted grid. Let's actually change this to black so you guys can see that a little bit better. You can change the spacing in between, or excuse me, the spacing of the grid, the subdivisions of it. You can really see that here in the regular grid. So you can put it all the way down to 4, or you could bring it all the way up to 27 or more, and also increase the spacing. So you can be a lot more in control of your grid than you normally would. And then finally, you have your guides. Now, I don't use guides, but you can basically take any one of your elements, and in the object panel, you can actually convert it into a guide. So if we actually look here, oops, this is a bad example. Let's duplicate that and pull this over here. And we'll talk about the object. Oops. We'll talk about the object a little bit later. But if you'll notice now this has become a guide. So I don't know how well you guys can see it. Let's actually go and grab a shape so you guys can see it a little bit better. And of course, I use a color that's very hard for you to see. There you go. So now you can see that there's now a guide there for that shape. So let's go through and undo that. And then finally, actually, no, that is it. So that's basically it with the precision, the precision section. Again, this is something I don't really use a whole lot. I don't find that I'm going to be using it, but I wanted to quick go over it for you guys right there. Now, this is something that I use a lot on the desktop, and notice how it's taking a little bit of time to pull up. But the cool thing is that we have the Pathfinder section. So I'm actually going to copy this tree here. Let's press this and let's enlarge this and make sure it's constrained. Now, if we go into the Pathfinder, you're actually going to see here something interesting. You're going to see it actually shows you what each of these elements does. So you can see on the right side, we have combine all, which will combine all the elements. They'll all be green. We can do minus front, which will get rid of the 2 triangles that we have at the top, cutting it off right where it intersects with this gold line here, the tree trunk. Then we have intersect. I'm not fully sure what intersect it does. I don't think it does anything for this specific example, but it will be something I'll probably talk about in a later video. And then we have exclude overlap, which basically what it'll do is it will combine them all, but it will take out any points that it intersects. So for instance, it would take out the triangle intersection in between the two triangles, and it'll take out the intersection between the tree trunk and the bottom of the tree there. And then finally, we have the divide all. And this is something I use a lot with my illustrations, is divide all. So I've clicked it, and now if I go and select part of the tree up here, and then I move this part, you'll notice that it's clipped off that little bit. So it's cut out there. But if we go in here and select that element, we can actually see that this also has been moved. So that's what divide all does. I think that this is something that is definitely beneficial, and it's something I wish that Adobe Fresco had. So it's very, very beneficial there. Below the Pathfinder, we actually have the edit button. Now this is probably one of the more simpler panels here on the right side. So if, for instance, I select this here and I go to the edit, we have three main options up top. We have the scissors, which is actually cut or delete. So actually delete your object. Or we have the copy, which will copy it to the clipboard. Then we have the paste option. So now it has pasted a copy of that right there. The edit panel is something that is definitely very beneficial, especially if you have trouble remembering how to go through and do these quick, simple actions. It also allows you to copy appearances and paste the appearances on specific objects. I don't use many appearances in Adobe Illustrator, so it's not something that I'm going to go into much detail here, but it is there in case you need it. So next, we actually have the alignment tool. So we're going to go ahead and delete this tree here. We'll go back to those trees in a little bit, but we don't necessarily need it for this exact option. But what we're going to do is we're going to click on the car here, and we're going to go into the alignment. So this is something that will definitely help you out when it comes to trying to get certain elements in the center or along the sides of your specific objects. And it can also help you align things together. So for instance, if I press on the top left under align, it will align it directly to the left side of the artboard. If I click on the middle, it'll be the middle, and on the right, it'll align to the right. And then we can even align it to the top, the middle, or the bottom of the artboard horizontally and vertically. So we're actually going to undo that and put it right back to where it was. Perfect. Or nope. There we go. That's where it was. And now let's jump back over to these trees here. I'm going to go through and select this grouping, and we're going to copy them. And then we're going to move them up here. So what I'm going to do is I want to actually give them a lot more space than what they have. So I'm going to move this tree over. And now I don't want to try and go through here and actually move all these individually and them not to look too uniform. So I'm going to select them all. I'm going to go to my align. I'm going to go and click the distribute horizontal. And so what that just is, it took all of these objects and it distributed all of the middle elements, the four trees in the middle. It distributed them evenly between the left and the right. Now this is something that is very simple, but it's something that is also very powerful when it comes to creating illustrations, especially when you're creating something like this, where there are a lot of elements that need to be stagnated like that. Other options you also have here are your flip, where you can flip things both horizontal and vertical. Let me actually delete these trees here so we can try that with the car. So we're going to select the car, and we're going to go to our line, and we'll just flip it over to horizontally, and then we'll flip it vertically. So now the car is actually into an accident. It flipped over. Okay, that's a bad joke. But you can kind of see here like what you can do with this tool. Now, below that, we have another powerful tool, and that is we're going to select one of these clouds for an example. We have the object tool, or the object panel, I should say. So here we can do a lot of different things. We can ungroup our elements. We can go in here and we can create a clipping mask with them. As you can see, it made a clipping mask of these elements here. We can also go in, we can create stroke outlines. So if we had something that actually had strokes, so actually let's undo what we did there. Let's go over to one of these trees, which I believe they should be. Yep, they're grouped together. We can go in here. It looks like we can't, which is interesting. But what I was going to try and do was create stroke outlines. So what that would have done was it would have taken these strokes here and made them into paths. But it's not letting me for some reason. And then we can also make a compound path as well, which is, it kind of goes into with Pathfinder and similar to what we had here, which was the exclude and overlap. So we're going to go ahead and undo that, and we'll zoom back out. The next thing we have here is we have the type area. Again, something I don't really use that often in the app, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it is there in case you need it. And then we have the path. Now, if you remember, whenever we used the pen tool or whenever we were selecting individual paths, we had the actual path panel down below in our action panel. And so these are all the little elements here that you can use. Again, you can cut a path. You can have handles for the path. You can remove handles for the path, etc. And then finally, this is actually one of my favorite tools for this app, or one of my favorite panels, and that is the repeat. The repeat is actually, I think, one of the most powerful parts of this. So what we're going to do here is we're going to actually show first kind of like what it can do. So we're going to choose the car here, and we're going to first go and do radial. Wow, take a look at that. So what it just did there was it just took all of these cars and it went through and made it into a circle repeat pattern. Now, there's two different things we can do here. We can actually go on the right side and we can increase the number of cars, or we can decrease it. So we can have 4 cars, we can have 5, 6, we probably even have 3 cars, 2 cars, 3 cars. We can also go in and with this we can remove, whoops, let's actually increase the number of cars there. So you can kind of see here, we can actually change where we see the actual rotation of the cars there. Let's undo all this because we don't actually need to do that for this example. But you can kind of get the power of that. Now let me undo, there we go. Let's actually go in here and we're going to zoom in. And let's go ahead and grab a triangle shape. So we're going to go in and we're going to create this triangle. And let's actually go and just round this edge right here just a little bit. Kind of like what we saw with the trees over here on the right. So we're going to decrease the size of it just a bit, just so it can fit nice and good. Now we're going to go over to the mirror here. Let's see how it looks with the radial. And just like you saw with the car, now we can actually create those crazy pointed stars using this one specific triangle. We can also remove certain edges so that only one part of it has the repeat pattern. But let's actually undo that because we don't want to do that right now. The next thing we have here, we're going to skip the grid for now because that's going to be our main focus, but we can do a mirror. So with a mirror, we have 2 objects, and if we change one object, it'll change them both. We can also change the number of shapes still, because remember, this is still a shape, so we can still change the number of sides to the shape and everything like that. We can also change where they are mirrored or where they are located. So if we move one of these, the other one moves as well. We can bring them in, we can bring them out, and everything. So a very nifty feature. Again, it's not something that I necessarily will be using for a lot of my illustrations, but if you're creating a character or a face or something like that, and you only want to create one side of it at a time, you can use this feature, and it should be pretty nifty and help you out. But we're going to undo that. All right, and now we're going to use the part that I love. This is the grid tool. Now, for any of you who use Adobe XD, you will see this looks very, very familiar. It's very familiar to Adobe XD's repeat grid tool on the desktop. Now, we can go in here and we can make this as long as we want. We can keep pushing the limits of it. We can go in, if you see at the top of the second triangle, we can move this in and we can change the distance of those. We can even change the height, so we can move this down if we want a little bit less space there. What I want to do is I actually want to just have this one single row, and that's about it. We'll move that. That looks good. So we'll move this over just so we can get a little bit extra on the edges there. All right, so what I'm going to then do is I'm going to go up to our object, and I'm going to expand this. And this is a quick little tip in case you guys want to use this for these specific reasons. And then I'm going to get our direct selection tool. Now, first thing you'll notice is what is going on, right? We have all of these different anchor points showing up, but we only see these things. And that's because this is a clipping mask. So right now, this rectangle around these triangles that you can see, these are clipping masks. This is a clipping mask on these. Now, if you open this up on Illustrator on the desktop, you actually won't have a problem. When you release the clipping mask, the only ones that you're going to see are the ones that are on this visible row. So you will see this triangle on the left and this little triangle on the right. But what we're going to do for our examples, we're just going to take the direct selection and select this triangle here. We're going to delete that. And we're going to select this one on the right. Let's actually zoom in so we can make sure we get it perfect, and delete. And so now we've just created this single element. Again, when you select it, you can see all the other triangles. Just don't worry about that. We're just going to be worrying about this, and we can move it into place wherever we need it. Okay, so that is basically all of the different elements on the left and right panels. Now, if we go back up to the top area here, we can actually go in and we can do a couple options. This is where you're going to export your file, where you're going to send your file and everything like that. So you can either do a publish and export, which actually will export the file as an AI file, PDF, SVG, PNG, PSD, whatever type of format that you generally need for that. You can do that, or you can go in and quick export a single PNG, which is just going to be the actual view here. And for those of you who want to, you can actually go and start a live stream. So you can start a live stream directly on Behance from the app itself, which is actually really cool. But that's not something that I do here. I don't actually go in and export my files. I can. That's a quick and easy way to do it, but you might not generally have to do that. Instead, what you do is you click out of this, and now it has saved it to your cloud documents. So what you can do is you can actually go in and open the desktop app, go to your cloud files, and actually pull up the file directly there. And that is basically it for everything with Adobe Illustrator on the iPad. All right, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to today's walkthrough for Adobe Illustrator on the iPad. Hopefully, I know this video is super long. I think it's gonna be clocked at over 45 minutes long. It's beefy, but hopefully you're able to skip parts that you didn't necessarily care about or didn't want to know using the chapters in the show notes. If you guys have any questions whatsoever, things about that I didn't talk about, please leave them down below in the comments. Or if you have ideas of what you would like to see me create or talk about in future videos, again, leave them down below in the comments. If you like this video, hit that like button. If you guys are not subscribed yet, please remember to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Like I've said before, there's a lot of new videos coming out in the near future, and I'm really excited to share that all with all of you. Well, hope you guys had a great day. Hope you enjoyed the content. Always remember to stay safe out there with everything that's going on. And please always remember to stay passionate, stay positive, and stay creative. That's it for me, everybody. Hope you guys have a great day. Bye.